Okay, we are live. Thank you everyone for coming today. Today's workshop is Intro to Google Tools, which will be taught by Rebecca. My name is Susan Winkler. I am our technology librarian here at the Champaign Public Library, and I want to welcome you to today's workshop. We'll get to introduce Rebecca here in just a moment, but first I want to let you know a little bit about Zoom in case it's your first time in the Zoom environment, and also a new feature that we have, which is called live transcription. So the first thing I want to mention is down in the bottom corner in the left-hand side, that is where you can control your speaker and your volume. In the middle, you'll see a chat bubble. It looks like a little comment bubble. And we do ask that if you have questions, you can go ahead and type them out in chat if you'd like, or if you want to make any comments for us here. And you can either comment just to the panelists or to panelists and all attendees. That's your choice. But we will, once they are in the chat, I will verbalize. Is that a word? Verbalize or say them out loud to Rebecca so that she then can answer the questions. If you'd like her to repeat a demo or anything, please put that in the chat and we'll have her do that. There's also a raise hand button, and the raise hand button you can use if you need technical help or assistance, or if you'd like to be unmuted so that you can ask your question verbally of Rebecca. I know sometimes it's harder to type, and we're happy to let you speak your question as well. We will also have at points in the presentation, she'll have question slides where then it's also a good time then, but please interrupt us throughout. We don't want to move on until you feel comfortable with what we've talked about. And I do also want to mention that the library is open right now. We are open for grab and go services, which means you can come in and pick up your holds. You can browse the shelves. You can have some time on the computers, but you can also pick up your books curbside if you like. And if anything changes with that, we will put that on our website, which is champaign.org. And okay, oh, and I was going to mention live transcriptions too. So live transcriptions, if you hover down at the bottom, just past your raised hand, there should be a little box with a CC. And if you tap on that box, you'll have the option to hide transcription or enable transcription. Okay, I think that's all that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rebecca. Rebecca Van Dusen is one of our library associates here at the Champaign Public Library, and she will be our instructor for today. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing good. How are you, Susan?
Not bad. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what we're learning today?
Okay, so we are talking about Google Tools today. Let's go ahead and just jump in. I have a PowerPoint that we will get started with. So let me share my screen. And then let me know if anything looks weird or if you can see my screen there.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and spotlight yours as well. All right, yes, I can see Intro to Google Tools, the slide.
Okay, cool. So Google Tools, what are we going to be talking about today? So we're going to be talking about what Google Tools is. So, you know, we're going to be kind of going through the motions of defining what Google Tools are and then actually getting into the demonstrating and using particular tools. So we're going to be using Drive. You may have heard of something called a Google Drive before. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be getting into template galleries, which are templates for different things you can use, such as Google Documents with Google Sheets, Google Slides, and we'll talk more about those, but that's something we're going to cover. We're also going to talk about how to download something that you have on Google Drive or within something like Google Docs or Google Slides. We're going to talk about permissions, so who might have permission to get into that document, to edit that document, stuff like that. We're also going to talk about collaborations. So the cool thing about having things with Google Drive is that a lot of people can jump into a document, collaborate on it, work together. It's really, really useful for that. Okay, so let's jump right into some definitions. So what are Google Tools? I have a couple of little icons on the right side that are some of the icons associated with Google Tools. So you'll see the icon for Google Drive, Google Meet, Google Calendar, and Gmail. Now these are not all of the icons that are all of the things on Google Tools, but these are just some of the ones I pulled out. In short, Google Tools is Google's products and services. So they range from cloud-based productivity to apps for phones. So things that you can do on your desktop, you might also be able to do on your phone, your tablet. So we'll also talk about that as well. And Google Drive is a cloud-based file storage that also includes the Office suite with Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Forms, Google Drawings, and Google Fusion tables. Now, we're not going to get into all of those. The main things we're going to cover with that is Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Drives. Or I'm sorry, Google Slides. But if you have any questions about anything else, feel free to let us know. We can go into more of that later as well. And basically all of these things allow real-time collaborations with other users, and it allows for storage of documents, drawings, forms, spreadsheets, and presentations within that service. Basically, it also helps you kind of store things while also being useful for creating things like documents or slideshows. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them as well. You might have heard of something called G Suite. So G Suite is a cloud-based Office suite geared towards productivity and collaboration. You'll hear that productivity and collaboration thing a lot. That's a lot of what Google Drive and the G Suite Google tools have to do with each other. And it's typically targeted towards business or education, but it is also available for personal use. And G Suite includes Gmail, Google Docs, Google Drive, Meet, Sheets, Slides, and Calendar. And then Google Docs is the web-based processing application offered by Google. So if you have a Google account, you'll get Google Docs for free, and you can get in there and edit or create documents. Google Sheets is their web-based spreadsheet generating application. That's hard to say. Say that 5 times fast. And then Google Slides is their slide presentation, and it's all web-based. Again, I usually like to kind of compare it to Word. So it's kind of like the online version of something like Microsoft Word, something like Excel, or something like PowerPoint. It's kind of Google's equivalent, but it's for free and it's web-based. So what are Google tools? Again, they're files created with well, Google tools are not, but they're within Google tools. You can create files with Google Docs, Sheets, or Slides, and they're automatically saved into Google Drive. And Google Drive is one of the Google tools. That's a lot of Google, a lot of Googles. All three have corresponding apps that can also be downloaded to smartphones or tablets. So for instance, I have a Google Drive app on my phone, and you can also get it for your tablet. And that way it helps even more with that collaboration. So if you're not near a computer, you can still get onto that through your phone or tablet and get in, edit, create, stuff like that. And they can also be downloaded. Like if you create a file on Docs, Sheets, or Slides, you can download those files as well. So they don't have to be completely based in the cloud. You can also get them out, download them, and you can also open them with corresponding products. For instance, you could download something from Google Docs and then open it up with Microsoft Word and edit it in Word if you needed to. So that's also an option. Now, keep in mind that if you do that, the formatting could also change slightly, and we'll talk more about that later. If you have any questions about that too, we can help answer those. And there's a bunch more Google tools than just the ones that I kind of said before. If you go into your Google account, you'll see different things. Like, for instance, you can get into your Gmail, you can get into Google Calendar. You've probably heard of something called Google Earth. Google Maps is a really popular one as well. Google Translate I use sometimes here at work because it's really easy and simple to use for people that need something quickly translated. Google Street View is really popular. That's kind of in collaboration with Google Maps, where you can kind of get a street view of someplace on Earth, really anywhere that's been added to their database. Pretty cool. Okay, I know that was a lot of info to start off with, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So Rebecca, we did have someone ask about getting a copy of the handout for today. We will be sending it out in the follow-up email as a digital copy, but we can also provide you with a physical copy if you prefer. And for that, you can schedule curbside delivery with us, and we can run it out to the car for you. or if you're unable to get to the library, we can work out arrangements to maybe mail it. Just let us know.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have all of the stuff that I go over on the slides will be in that handout. And there'll also be some like additional links for additional help or reading, and of course our contact information as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into some of the demonstration stuff. So I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint. And I'm going to start sharing my web page. Okay, let me know if you can see that. It
Yes,
should
I can see
show
the
our
home.
library site.
Yes, library's homepage. Yep.
Okay, so first let's go ahead and demonstrate how to get into Google Drive. So there's a couple of different ways you can get into Google Drive. You can start off and go to google.com. Let me move my little video out of the way here. So if I go to google.com, I'll come to that first search page, but if I go into the top right corner, you'll see a blue sign in button, but also a couple of links. So I'll see a link to get into Gmail, to Google Images, and then a little square that has a bunch of dots in it. So if you see that I hover over it, it says Google Apps. If I click on that, that's going to let me jump into different Google apps. So say I wanted to jump into my Google Drive, or I wanted to get into my calendar. I can do that right from that little square. I'm just going to go ahead and hit sign in, and that's going to get me into my Google account. There's also a way you can just jump into Drive from the address bar. If I type in drive.google.com, if I spell that right.
You're up in the far left corner, correct? That's where the address bar is.
Yes, up at the top of my screen, if you see right now I have it highlighted in blue. That's where my address bar is. Let me delete all the stuff out of there first again. And I'm going to type in drive. Oops. It's important to spell that right. drive.google.com. And then I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. And that should bring me to a sign in page for Google Drive. It'll say sign in to continue to Google Drive.
Rebecca, will you increase your text size within the browser?
Yeah. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. So now to get into Google Drive, it does require a Google account. So if you don't already have an account, you would come down and click where it says create account. And then it would ask you to create a free Gmail account. So if I click create account, then I could go in and then create a Google account. And it will have a Gmail account associated with it. So that's kind of cool. If you have a Gmail account, you'll already have all these Google tools assigned to you. But let me go back and then I'll sign in with our demo account.
That also means that anyone with an Android phone, since your Android phone is linked to Google, you actually have a Google account, whether you realize it or not. So you could use your account that you use on your cell phone for Google on the desktop too.
It's kind of cool. Some of the stuff I didn't know I had until I got into that menu with all the different stuff on it. And then you're like, oh, I didn't know I had access to all this stuff. It's kind of nice. Oh, let me get the correct password here. Okay, so now I've signed in and now I'm at the landing page for my Google Drive. And you'll see up in the top right corner, I have my Google account information where I can go and manage my Google account or sign out. And then I have my icons again that I can jump into my different Google tools. And then I can scroll through there. And then I can jump to a different one if I wanted to, if I didn't want to be in Drive anymore. And then I have my settings, and then there's a support page for if I needed some help. But overall, the first page I'm going to see is just the stuff that I have in my Google Drive. So if I scroll down, I can see all the stuff that I have saved. So for you, it might look different because maybe you have your pictures saved in Google Drive. Maybe you have a lot of documents that you're working on. So yours might look different depending on what you have in there. And I can also search in my Google Drive. Up at the top, you'll see it has a little search bar next to this magnifying glass. And that magnifying glass is a good little indicator of searching. That's kind of a universal symbol with the internet and with computers. That magnifying glass is going to help me search. And I can search within my drive. If I was looking for a particular document or a picture, I could search in there for it. And then I can also create stuff. So if you look on your left side of your Google Drive, and you'll see a button that says New. So that's going to help me create something. So if I wanted to make a new Google document or a Google Slides or a, like, what's the other one? Google Spreadsheet, I can do that from here. So once I click on New, it's going to bring up another menu, and it's going to let me do a couple things. So I can either create a new folder for my Google Drive. Say I wanted to get all my pictures in one folder, I could create a new folder for that. I could upload files. So I can upload files from my computer or a drive that I have in my computer and put it on my Google Drive. And that would go to the cloud instead of it being on, well, it would still be on your computer if you had it on there, but you could also upload it to Google Drive. Or of course you can create your own. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Google Docs and create a Google document. So once I click that, it's going to bring me to a new page with my document that I want to have created. So up at the top, you'll see that it says Untitled Document. And if I click on that, then I can rename it. So let's go ahead and rename it Test Document, if I could spell correctly. There we go. And now once I have hit enter, it's automatically saved as that. I don't need to go in and do file save. That's the cool thing about Google. Once you start editing it and doing things, it will automatically save all of your edits. So that's pretty cool. So you'll see it says last edit was seconds ago. If I see up here in the top of my screen where my mouse is, and then I could type whatever I wanted here. Test learning. Let's type something here. Learning Google Tools is fun. So that's just a way you can get in there and create, and it's similar to Word in that you can change your text size, your font. You can change some of the stuff so that if you wanted it underlined or bolded or larger, you can change that too. Now it's not going to have a full functionality of like a full software like Microsoft Word, but it's really useful if you're just trying to make something simple. I use Google Docs all the time if I'm just trying to throw together a document that I want to print off. And it's super easy to do. Okay. Let me also go back to that Google Drive page so that I can show you how to make it from a template. So I just went in and created a new one, which is a blank template, so I can make my own. But you can use a template that Google has. If I create a new one and I hover over this button here on the right of Google Docs, and it says I can either create a new Google document from a blank document or from a template. So let me click from a template. And that's going to bump me out to the templates that Google has in their template gallery. So for instance, you'll see stuff that comes up here first that's resume stuff. So this is stuff we've recently used. It has a lot of resume templates. There's also templates for different work documents. So you might have maybe a project proposal that you're looking to make.
Rebecca, could you go ahead and increase the size on those just a little bit?
Oh yeah, let me zoom in a little.
There, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. It's a kind of a small image just because the template is itself small on Google Docs. But if I scroll down, then I'll see the different types, like there's a letter template I can use. So let's click on one and then make one. But let me see if there should also be a way to, I think there's a way to search templates, unless I'm wrong. Let's see. I don't think there is actually. That seems kind of strange. I guess you just have to scroll through their different options there.
You could always use Control F and say like resume, and it'll bring up, it'll highlight anything where it's, where it says the word resume. Or if you wanted to do like newsletter, you could do that. But I think you're right. I think there is a way, and it might be on that first that first page within your Google Drive where you could search for the templates specifically. So up at the top where it says search in Drive, and you could say resume template or template.
Oops. I don't know why I add P's or R's to stuff all the time.
Maybe not.
Doesn't look like it. I'll have to look into that more later.
Okay.
But I don't think maybe it's because they don't have too many and they found that it wasn't useful to search. I don't know. That's a question for Google. But let me go ahead and pick one so that we can get into the template. So I'm going to pick a letter template. And then it's going to create a new document for me with that template. So you'll see at the top it says the name of the template, and I can rename this test letter. And then I can go in and fill in my name if I wanted to. And then just, you know, it's got this autofill stuff that it's automatically doing, but then I can go in and fill in my own information from here. And this works really well if you're doing something like a resume and you need just some help with formatting. So check that out on Google Drive, especially if you're creating a new document and you're not sure where to start.
Rebecca, it looks like from what I can see that they just ask you to go to the template gallery and search through the template gallery.
Okay. Interesting. There's also galleries that you can choose templates from within Google Sheets and Google Slides. So if I'm on creating my new file on Drive, I go to New, and then I go over to Google Sheets. I can also get a template for Google Sheets. So it looks like there's templates for a to-do list, annual budget, 2020 calendar, well, 2021 now, travel planner. It looks like a bunch of different stuff. Let me go back to the Google Slides also. From template. So it looks like there's a couple of things I can choose from for Google Slides as well. Looks like some recipe showcase thing. That looks interesting. Something that maybe I would share with my family if I was sharing recipes, photo albums, just like general presentation. So I would definitely recommend going into Google Drive and kind of seeing what's out there in case you are interested in doing a template. Okay, let me go back to Google Drive. Does anybody have questions so far about any of that?
No questions so far.
Okay. So let me go ahead and get back into Google Docs. So like with Drive, there's also a way to get directly into Google Docs. So if I type in docs.google.com up in my address bar at the top of my web browser, and then I hit enter, it will bring me right into the Google Docs page. It looks like it brings me right into where I can start a new document. It will allow me to jump into the template gallery if I wanted to, but
Hey,
it's
Rebecca,
also got,
will you hit the arrow for the template gallery there next to it? That drop down?
yes, it looks like it just put them,
Okay.
it just opened it up,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I thought maybe that would give us like categories, but nope.
It looks like it just bumped me out to the template gallery page where I could go in and scroll through.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So docs.google.com, once I'm logged in, will bring me to my Google Docs page. So it's kind of like my Drive page where it has all of my files in it, but it's just pertaining to my Google Docs files. And again, it will let me create, so this kind of plus sign that's red, yellow, green, and blue, that's kind of Google's general like create a new something button. So if I see that, then I can go ahead and click that and then it would create a new document for me, if that makes sense. And then I can also scroll down and see some of my recent documents. So I've got quite a few in there. And then I can open them, edit them, or just create a new one like I was saying before. So let's go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to click plus next to the blank one. And like before, it's going to bump me out to a new page that has where I can go and edit my document. Test document 2. And then I can go in and create edits. So let's write something out. Let's do learning Google Docs is fun and interesting. So I could type in whatever I needed there. Like say if I was writing a paper for school, or if I had like a letter I was writing, I could do anything I wanted to with this Word document, really. Let's also talk about the toolbar up at the top, because that's kind of important too. So I'll see a couple of different options here. I can go through like my file tab where I can create a new document. I can share my document. I can download, email. There's quite a few different options, and we'll go more through how to download stuff later. But these are kind of like with Word, where you'll be able to insert like an image. You can format your text. You can use some of the tools it has, and we'll talk about some of that too, especially with the spelling and grammar. I'm not a great speller, as you can probably tell while I'm typing, so that one's helpful for me. And then of course you can see my last edit was seconds ago, so it's saving my history as I'm typing. Oop, I don't want to do that. And then at the right here in the top corner, you'll see this blue share button. And that's really important if you wanted to collaborate with somebody on this document. So say I wanted to share this document with Susan so that she could get in and edit it as well. Say we're both working on a project and we both want to make an easy document that we can throw ideas into, or have a document that we can both edit. This is a way we can do that. So I can create the document and then share it with Susan, and then she can go and make edits, and then I can make edits in the same document. Super easy. So if I click on share, this is going to give me another window that's popping up so I can add people that I want to share this document with. So I'm going to go ahead and share it with Susan so that she can jump in on it. So I'm going to share it with Champaign librarian at gmail. Oh, see, this is why I'm bad at spelling. I keep hitting the wrong keys. Champaign librarian at gmail.com. Okay, so once I've got that selected, then I have another couple of options here. I can change the permissions of this person if I were to click on this little drop-down window here. So that's going to let me change how that person that I'm sharing with can edit or look at the document. So they can either be a viewer of the document where they can only see it but not edit or change anything. They could be a commenter on the document. For instance, maybe I was sending this document to Susan and she was proofing it, but I didn't want her to make any changes. So if I click on commenter, that's going to allow her to put in comments, but it's not going to let her change the actual document. I have her checked now as editor. And if she's an editor, that means she can go in and make changes as if she was the one that created the document. So she could take things out, add things in, move stuff around, kind of like as if she was creating her own, if that makes sense. And then if I have this notify people check mark, I think you get an email message saying that they've shared that document with you. And then I could go and say, hey, Susan.
Yes, that actually especially works if they do not already have a Google account. To notify people, it sends a message to their email letting them know that someone has shared a Google Doc with them.
Okay, and then you'll see at the bottom it says I'm sharing test document 2. And then once I'm ready to send that and share it with her, I can click the send button. So let me go ahead and do that. Send. Okay, and then up at the top, you'll notice it says person added. I'm not sure if you can see that up at the very top of the screen where my mouse is. It says person added. And if I click on share or hover over share, it'll tell me I've got it shared with one person. So if I click on that again, it'll tell me who I've shared it with, and I can always go in and add more people. And I can also change her permissions from here as well. So right now, she's Champaign librarian at Gmail. I can go in and click, if I wanted to change it, I could click and make her just a viewer, commenter, or I can keep her as editor, or I can also take her off the document. So if I didn't want her to be in my document anymore, or I wanted to revoke that privilege of her being able to access it, I could click remove. Make owner would mean that that would make her have the permissions to share the document or revoke the document, if that makes sense.
It also means she could revoke your privileges too.
Yes. Yes. So that would basically give her ownership of the document.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't want to change any of that. So I'm just going to hit done. And then you'll also notice up at the top corner here, you'll see some little icons. So this is telling me who's kind of in. So I've got Susan there with the little pink ring around her icon. And then I can also show a chat. So there's a chat that you can get into as well if you wanted to chat about what you were editing or adding into there, you could do that as well. And you'll see that her little cursor there, it says Champaign Library. So that's Susan actually on the document editing. And she's typing as I'm talking right now. And you'll see her edits and anything will be in her specific color. So hers color is assigned as pink according to Google. And it might change depending on who's in it. I am editing things. So that's a really fun way to get in and work together on a document, and you don't kind of need to be on the same computer or have the exact same document. This is all in the cloud, so it's really easy to collaborate and change things quickly. Any questions about that so far?
No comments so far.
Okay. Let's also talk about some of those tabs that we had at the top. We had some tabs to do with some of the tools. So for instance, if I get into the Tools tab, I can get in and change my spelling, or I'm sorry, check my spelling and grammar. So for instance, if I had something spelled wrong, let's spell something wrong on purpose instead of accidentally. Did I actually spell it right? I need a better word to spell wrong.
Anyone want to give a suggestion in the chat?
Okay, I did receive because I always spell that word wrong.
There you go.
I think it automatically corrected. So let me change that. Show spelling suggestions. Let's do maybe like, I'm trying to think because a name would be spelled wrong, but we don't want a name.
Mm-hmm. There is also a way, once you have a name in there, you can put it as something that spell check will not check each time. And that's something we can show folks as well.
Okay, I've got another one of the I and E words that I'm not good at spelling. Experience. So you'll notice that the little red squiggly line comes up underneath it. That's Google telling you that, hey, you've got something spelled wrong or something looks wrong. If I were to right click on that, it's going to give me some suggestions. So it will ask, did you mean experience? Or there's also some feedback on there that you can give to Google. Or I can go up to my Tools tab and click Spelling and Grammar, and then go to the Spelling and Grammar check. So that will open up another window where it will ask you if you wanted to change that word to the correct spelling or whatever Google thinks is the correct. Now I can decide to ignore that as well. So for instance, if it was a name that you knew was spelled right, but Google is like, hey, I don't recognize this, you can always click to ignore that if you want to ignore it. But I'm going to go ahead and accept it because I want to accept that. And now it's saying the document looks good because there's nothing else that it sees in terms of wrong spelling or grammar, if that makes sense. Okay. And then also with Google, especially with Google Docs and like Sheets and Slides, if you're copy and pasting, you're going to be using the keyboard shortcuts instead of the mouse. I don't know why Google really kind of prefers that, but if you do it with the mouse, it's going to tell you the copy and pasting commands. So let's do something. Let's copy and paste Let me get our website and paste that in there. So if I right click with my mouse and I click paste, okay, it's going to do it. That's weird. It usually tells me that I can't.
It's because you're using the Chrome browser.
Oh.
And they have the extension installed.
Okay, that will see, it's giving me all these like perfectly formatted things, and I can't even get the wrong thing to come up to demonstrate.
If you use Firefox or Safari or Microsoft Edge, Google Docs doesn't play quite as well with those. And that is where you will have to use your keyboard shortcuts.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just show the slide for this one, and then that way we can see it. Let me stop the share and then start it with the slide.
Okay.
It's funny how that works out.
And then we do have a request to show what comments look like and the suggestions. And I did put a comment in the document, but you can show that when you're ready.
Okay, cool. Let me find the slide that I'm talking about here. Here we go. Okay. So as I was saying before, you might not be able to use your mouse for doing copy and pasting. So your keyboard shortcut is what you're going to want to use instead. And usually when you're doing that, Google will pop up a window that will say, hey, those actions are unavailable, but you can use your keyboard shortcut, and it will give you how to do it. So that's really useful. And I'll include this in the slides too, so you won't have to worry about forgetting what the keyboard shortcuts are. And then let's go ahead, and we wanted to talk about comments, and then what was the second one?
I think suggestions was what I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, show what comment looks like, and can those suggestions be deleted after the original person has seen them?
I believe they can be deleted. Okay. So it looks like Susan has given me a comment. So on the right side, I see a little comment that said, this is a comment that Rebecca will see. So let's see what happens if I click on that. Okay, so it looks like you've highlighted the word things and then you've put a comment on that. Is that right, Susan?
Yes.
Okay. So this is really useful if you're maybe proofreading a document and you had like a little suggestion or a comment that you wanted to leave so that they can see that, instead of you going in and editing it and then all of a sudden they don't see it. So, and then I could click here and then on that comment and reply back. So maybe we have a discussion about what we wanted to edit within that comment. That's really useful. If I click on this little blue check mark, then I will mark that as being done, and then it will hide that comment. If I click on these little 3 dots, it gives me some more options. So I can link to this comment. I think that will allow me to maybe email this in something. I could copy this link and email it maybe to Susan and say, hey, check this out. I left a comment on your thing. So that's kind of a useful tool there if you want to copy and paste the link to that. Does that help answer your question about commenting?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and we also had one about suggestions. Is that
well as the comments as suggestions? So if I was to suggest this should be editing thing instead of things, maybe you should, maybe you want to look at whether or not you want to call this not a great document, but an okay document or whatever, then you would be able to go in and say, it is a great document.
Let me also show how to do that too, in case I was the one proof editing for you, Susan, and I wanted to leave a comment on something.
Sure.
So maybe I wanted to leave a comment on this first sentence here. So I'm going to highlight it. And then you'll notice these little tools come in the side here as I'm highlighting. Let me show that again. I'm going to click and drag over my text that I want to comment on. I'm going to let go, and I still have my tools over in the right side. And I'm going to click add comment. And then I'm going to say something like, I could say, I think it's super fun, and I want to learn more. And your comment could be anything, really. It's up to you what you want to post. So I can click comment, and then now I see that here. And I kind of see that as a highlighted text. So I have one comment over this first sentence, and then I still see Susan's comment over things. And I could click that, and then it will show, kind of toggle between both of those comments. And I think there should be a way that you can see all of the comments in one. Let's see. Maybe I'm not familiar with that as much.
To see the comment history up at the top, next to the big share button. That's open your comment history.
That makes sense. So up in the top right corner next to the blue share button, you'll kind of see that little chat bubble, kind of like how it looks on Zoom. And then I can get into my comment history, make a new comment also from here. And then I can change my notifications. So maybe I wanted to get notified when Susan made edits to my document or made a comment. I could click on that. I hope that helped answer the question about commenting.
Yes. Why don't you go ahead and resolve one of them?
Okay, let me click on this one. Okay, so it looks like it just went zoop and went back into that little comments history menu there. Zoop. Yep. And then it's back up here. And I can click reopen, and it should pop back up on my main screen, so I could see it if I didn't want it to go into that menu again. Whoop. Okay, and I also wanted to say that if you look in the top left corner of your document, right near your name for your document, you'll see the Google Docs icon. If I were to click on that icon, that would take me back to my Google Docs home. So then I could see all the other Google Docs that I have on my Google Drive. So say I was wanting to jump into another file I had, I could click on that Google Docs icon and then get back to the page and then look for the other document I wanted to open.
And here the templates are along the top, and documents that are owned by you or shared by others are under where it says recent documents owned by me.
Yep, I can change that to owned by anyone, not owned by me. So that's a good way to kind of filter out, okay, stuff that I want to see that's shared, I could do that. I can also change the way I view things on this right side here, or open a file, change the view option in a list rather than icons. So I recommend kind of playing around with that. I'll go ahead and move on to Sheets unless anybody has a question about Google Docs.
Can you, are you going to wait and show downloading until after you've gone through the other two?
I think so, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's go to Sheets. And again, Sheets is kind of Google's equivalent to Microsoft Excel, so spreadsheets. So again, if I click on, let me go back to my Google Drive actually. And I can click on new from here and do a Google Sheets from a template, or I can do a blank spreadsheet, or I can go up to my address bar, and I believe it's the same as Docs. I can do sheets.google.com, and it will bring me right to my Google Sheets homepage. So there's kind of a lot of pages that live within Google Drive, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a cascading thing. At least that's the way I think about it. And again, you'll have your template gallery up at the top that I can scroll through or open up, and then recent spreadsheets that I've gotten into, or I can just go ahead and create a blank one. So let's create a new one by hitting that plus button. And then it's going to open up a blank workbook for me, and I can go in and change the title. So test sheet 1. And then again, it's going to save that automatically. It saved it to my Google Drive. And then I can go in and add stuff. Say I was creating like a budget or something, I could go in and change my cell size. And this is stuff that is pretty similar to Microsoft Excel. It's got some of the tools up here, like some of the functions. I can add charts, I think, if I wanted to. So I recommend going in there and kind of playing around with some of the tools on there. And it's the same as Google Docs. It's got that share button. This time it's green because Google Sheets has green as their kind of branded color. Google Docs has a blue and Google Slides has a yellow. So it might look different. So I could do the same thing. I could share that, and then Susan can get in there if I shared it with Susan and do her edits. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. There's also keyboard shortcuts if I was to copy and paste something, but it's probably not going to be that way with this one because I'm on Google Chrome, but let me try it. Yeah, okay. It's not going to give me the keyboard shortcut menu that pops up, but keep that in mind if you're doing copy and pasting, it might have you do the keyboard shortcuts instead of the mouse buttons. And I can also change spelling too. So let's spell something wrong. Enter. Now it's not going to give me the squiggly line because I think sometimes with some of the like spreadsheet documents, it doesn't too much. But if I go to my tools and I go to spelling and spell check, it will pop up with another window on the right side here asking me if I wanted to change that. Now, if it was a name or something, I could add that to my dictionary so that next time it wouldn't pop up when I was doing a spell check. But if I click change, then I'm all good on that. Any questions about Google Sheets? I know I didn't cover that as much as Google Documents because most of the stuff, as far as the tools that you're clicking on and getting into the menus, it's pretty similar.
I will say, if you think we should have courses on each of these individually, please let us know in the feedback. If we get enough response that people are interested in having a tutorial specifically on docs or specifically on sheets, we can plan that for future seasons of our tech workshops.
Yes. Okay, let me get into Google Slides. And again, it's like with Google Docs, if I were to click on the little icon, it will bring me back onto the Google Sheets homepage. Or I could go to my four squares and click on Google Drive and then create a new document. And I could get into Google Slides. Or I can do slides.google.com. Like with many things, there's quite a few different ways to access things. So think about that too. Nothing's the wrong way. It just depends on how you prefer to access it. So again, it's going to bring us to our front page for Google Slides, where I can go in and pick a template, or I can create a new slide. So I'll hit blank because I want to create a new one. And now you'll see where it has this little pop-up window here. Sometimes if there's a new feature, Google will give you like a little pop-up window saying, hey, this is new. So for instance, we have new auto-fit text, which is a new feature, I guess, that they added. And then of course I can get in and create my slides, and I can actually present up here on the top right corner. I'll see a present button. So if I was all done and I wanted to present my slides, I could click on that button and start my presentation. And of course I have the share button if I wanted to share that with somebody else and they could, get in and see it or edit it. Now it's asking me to name before sharing, so I will go ahead and name it test slides and save that. And then I could go in and share it like I did with Google Docs and Google Sheets. And then let me see, I don't know if there is a spell. Okay, yes, there is a spell check. Oh, it automatically spell check. Let's see if it automatically, it always automatically does something. But if you were checking your spelling, you would go to Tools, Spelling, and then do spell check. So that's useful. Any questions so far about Google Slides? It's pretty straightforward. And you can choose your theme on the right side here. If I wanted to change the look of my slides, I could do that. I could change my formatting, like my text, or like if I wanted to change the way my text was aligned. I definitely recommend going through some of these menus because there's just so much you can change and edit. Next thing I'll cover is downloads, unless anybody has any questions. Okay, I'll just jump into the downloads.
Yeah, I don't see any raised hands or any questions come through chat. But again, remember, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you so that you can ask your question out loud, or feel free to put it in the chat. Or if you'd like to see us demo something a second time, feel free to put that in the chat or raise your hand.
Okay. I'm back on my Google Drive homepage. So I just went to the square with the little 9 dots and then clicked Drive, and that jumped me straight back to my Drive homepage. Or again, I could go to drive.google.com up in my address bar at the top of my screen. But this will bring me back to the stuff I've been editing, and then of course the stuff that I have saved in my Drive. So there is a way to download something, I believe right from this screen. Say I wanted to download my test slides. I could right click on it, and then I could go in. Let me move my little share screen thing because I can't see my whole menu.
Rebecca, before you move on, can you tell us again what Google Drive is?
Yeah, Google Drive is Google's cloud-based, I don't want to call it explicitly a storage. Let me get back to that definition because I feel like off the top of my head is not going to be as good as the one I had written down. Hold on a second. Okay, so Google Drive is Google's cloud-based file storage that also includes an Office suite. So it has Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and more of those Google tools. And those allow for that collaboration. So it really depends on how you like to use your stuff. So a lot of people use Google Drive just to store their stuff. So they may throw in pictures that they want to save, documents that they want to save so that it's on the cloud. But a lot of people use Google Drive to create stuff. So they'll create stuff like Google Documents so they can share and collaborate with people. I hope that made sense. Excuse me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So for me, I use it for both. I use it for storing a lot of pictures and stuff because Google will give you, I think, 15 gigabytes for free of storage that you can use before you have to buy more. Or you can get in there and just create stuff. I use it for both. So there's really not one way to use it. You can use it a lot of different ways. Let's talk about downloading, unless anybody has any more questions about the nitty-gritty of Google Tools or Google Drive. Okay, I'll get started. Okay, so say I wanted to download the slides that I just created with my Google Slides. So up in my homepage for Google Drive, I'll see where I just created my test slides, this document here, test slides 1, and I wanted to download it because maybe I wanted to print it off from my computer. So if I right click on the file, I can go down in this menu and you'll see there's an option here. It says download. I hope you can see that there. It's got a little arrow. Oh, sorry, that downloaded really fast. It's got a little arrow pointing to kind of an inbox kind of tray. I think that's what they're going for, is they're going for that little tray that it's downloading into. At least that's my impression from what their visual is, unless you get a different one. But it's kind of a universal symbol, that downward pointing arrow. Download. So if I click download, it's going to say it's converting to PowerPoint. So it looks like it's saving as a PowerPoint file, which can then be opened with Microsoft PowerPoint. Now, even if you don't have PowerPoint, I think you can still open it with certain software, but that's just the format that it's downloading as. Now I can also download from, like if I have a document open, so let's go ahead and open our test document that we were working with earlier. So if I got my document open and I click on File, let me move my little screen here because I can't see everything. I do File, and then I have an option here where I can save in a particular format. So I did File, and then I scrolled down to Document, and here I can choose. So my first format is Word, but I can also download it as a PDF, which is really useful because that's kind of a universal file format. Or you'll see some of the other documents that I can download it as. So I'm going to download it as a PDF. I would just click it, and then it should automatically download. So now it's opened up in a different window as a PDF. But that's how you download. Let me go back to the slides and see if it lets me download as a different format. File, download. Okay, so it does let you download as a different file for the slides as well. So maybe I don't have PowerPoint and I wanted to download it as a PDF. I could do it there as well. Any questions about downloading? I'll also say that keep in mind that some of the formatting might be a little different if you're downloading like a slide or a document or even a Google Sheets document. It might change some of the formatting if you're saving it as a Microsoft, like for instance, if you're saving it as an Excel file or a Word document or a PowerPoint document, it might not look exactly the same as it goes from Google to Microsoft, just because some of the formatting is a little different based on the software. So that's always something to keep in mind if you're doing like something last minute, if you're downloading your presentation and you're ready to give it right away, it's probably a good idea to go through and make sure everything looks the way you want it to look.
Rebecca, I have a quick question for you since you have a Mac. Have you attempted to download anything from Google Docs to your Mac? And if you download it as a Microsoft Word document, do you then have to have Word on your Mac to use it?
It will still let you download it as that file, but it won't, obviously, since I don't have Word on my computer. Now you can get it on a Mac. That's a possibility as well. But mine doesn't have Word on it, so it can't open it as a document, if that makes sense.
Okay.
There are ways you can get certain like open source software for Word that you can get if you don't want to buy Word. You can get like free versions and you can open the document files with that software, if that makes sense. And there is, Mac does have their own like word processing software and all that. I don't know if there is a, let me check on their list here, if there is a format for that. I don't think that they have their own specific file format for Mac. I'd have to look into that more. But usually if I'm not sure if I can open something, I will usually save it as a PDF because I know that all computers can open a PDF.
So we have a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
The question about Macs, and I assume that then you would still have to, even if you downloaded it as a Word document, you'd have to somehow convert it to Pages if that's what you have on your Mac.
I'm not 100% sure about the conversion thing, but I bet you're right, Susan. You probably would have to find a format that allowed you to open it in Pages.
If that's what you have, or maybe even like whatever their version of Notepad is without any formatting.
You can save it as a text file, which might let you save it, but it's not going to keep the formatting.
Right. So in that case, what we mean when we say keep the formatting is if you've made something bold if you've made it italicized, if you've made it a different font. So instead of Calibri, you've made it Arial. Those are all things that are formatting, including how many
Margins and
paragraphs you
stuff.
have, margins, all that stuff is considered formatting. So when that formatting goes away, it changes your document and the way your document's going to look.
I wrote that question down and I can follow up with that as well to see how to do that.
Okay. We also had a couple of other questions, stuff that we may wait until the end, but the one I do want to address is, can you tell which file on your computer to download it to?
This one, when I click download, it just automatically did it. I think it automatically is going into your downloads folder, but let me check. Yeah, I think it just goes into your downloads folder. It didn't allow me to save where it went.
Yeah, and then you can always take it out of your downloads folder and drag it and drop it wherever you want it to land. So if you really don't want it to stay in the downloads folder, but you want it to be in another folder that's labeled, say it's labeled budget, you can drag and drop that folder into budget. But when you initially download it, it does go into your downloads folder. Unless you've set up on your browser settings to have everything you download from the internet go to a different place than the downloads folder.
Yes. So it changes depending on some of the stuff in your settings.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But the default, I believe, is just the downloads folder. Okay. I think we pretty much covered everything. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. We covered permissions. We covered collaborations. Let me get back into the PowerPoint so I can show some of the additional links that we have as well. Let me know if you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me get back into the...
And
Most
I
of
do
this
have another
stuff is
question for you,
just...
Becca, after you've done the additional resources section.
Sure, yeah, I should have just scrolled there first. Easier that way. There we go. Okay, sorry that took forever. So some of these additional resources are from a website called gcflearnfree.org, and they're really good about like some of the tutorials they have. So they have tutorials on Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and overall just some computer stuff that you might be wanting to learn, like computer basics, internet basics. So check those out if you're interested in kind of a deeper dive on some of the Google tools. And then also Google support. So Google has a support page, support.google.com. If you have questions or you wanted to kind of browse their support page, it's really useful. I suggest going on there. We use Google support page quite often when we're kind of crafting some of this stuff for our webinars, because they usually have pretty simple explanations of some of the questions you might have. And then I also have my contact info here, and I'm always available for any questions. So don't hesitate if you have a question to shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm always available. And then Susan, you said you had another question too?
There are a couple that I wanted to kind of save, kind of park and save to the end, because it takes us a little bit away from Google Sheets and Slides and Docs, but is related to other Google tools.
Okay.
So if you want to add, if anybody has more questions about Google Slides and Sheets and Docs, I think now would be a good time to go ahead and bring them up. And then maybe we can transition to these others.
Yes. So I have my Google Drive pulled up again so I can demo anything that anybody might ask, or I'm happy to demonstrate something again too, if we want to do that.
Okay. Okay, I do have a raised hand, so I'm going to go ahead and allow them to talk. Okay, I think you should, if you go ahead and click on the ask to unmute button, then you should be able to speak your question.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay. You hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Now, how do you get into downloads again? I mean, when you first started, what did you click?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways you can download a file. I'll just demonstrate both, the ones that I mainly use. So if you're on your Google Drive or your Google Docs homepage, any of the home pages you can download directly from without opening the document. If you right click on the file, so say I wanted to download test document 2, I can right click on it and then click the download from that drop down menu that pulls up. Now that's not
Okay.
going to let me choose the file format that I'm downloading as. But if I open up the document, so if I double click on it and it opens up in a new page, then I can go up to the top under my document name and click on File, and then click Download from the menu. If I hover over it, it will let me choose the format that I want to download as. So I see I have a document, Word document I can save as, text file, PDF, and there's a few more in there as well.
Okay.
Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand then. And any other questions for Rebecca on the Google Slides, Sheets, or Docs, or Google Drive? Okay, if not, I'm going to go ahead and pose a couple of questions to you that are tangential.
Okay.
We had a question related to if you could give a peek at Google Translate by any
Oh, okay.
chance.
Yeah, let's get into Google Translate. So I'm already logged into my Google Drive. So I can get into Google Translate. If I click on the little square with 9 dots, I can jump right into Google Translate from there. Or I can go into, I believe it's just translate.google.com. And then it will open up a web page where then I can translate something. So I can have it detect the language. So say I was looking up something on the internet and I wasn't sure what language, I could copy and paste it right into there and Google would try to detect what language it was. And then I could tell Google, hey, I want it to spit out in English or I want it to spit out in Spanish, so that it's translating that language into something that I could read or understand, if that makes sense. So I can translate something if maybe we have like an example, or I can pull something up from online.
Which language do you want to go from and to?
That's a good question. I don't know. Let's do something and translate it into English, maybe.
Anyone have an example they want to throw into the chat? Or what she can translate? I will say I have used Google Translate on my smartphone, and it is nice because you don't necessarily need to have Wi-Fi or cellular data in order to use it. So if you're in another country and you want to use it, you don't necessarily have to use a data plan if you don't have an international plan. You can download the packet ahead of time for the language of the country that you're traveling to, if
And
you have it. And
there's some really cool tools on the Google Translate app. You can actually take a picture of something and have it translate the text that's on the picture. Or you can
not while you're driving in another country, but
or you can speak into the microphone and have it, like, say you were talking to someone and you wanted to have that a little easier for you to understand and comprehend each other. You could use the microphone, like for instance, I have it up on my phone here. I could click on that microphone and say something and it would translate for them so they could understand what I was saying and vice versa.
And they could read it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I encourage you all to play around with some of these other Google tools as well.
So
and,
for instance, I could write bonjour, a really simple French word, and then it would translate that into English, or I could even translate it to Spanish, Arabic, or any other language that Google has listed here. Norwegian. I could translate into Norwegian from
Yeah.
French if I wanted to.
Yes, and yeah, so you can go from other languages to other languages too, which is pretty amazing. Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
We did have another question that does take you back a little bit into cloud. We had someone ask about transferring things from one cloud provider to another. So for example, if your Google Drive is full and you can't put anything else in it in the free version, but you have another cloud service and you want to move some of that stuff over, what do you think is the best way to do that?
So typically what you'd have to do is anything that you wanted to move over, you'd have to download off of your cloud, off of, say we were moving something from Google Drive to iCloud maybe. What we would want to do is everything that you want transferred from Google Drive, you'd have to download onto your computer, and then you would have to upload that onto Google or onto iCloud. So you download your stuff that you wanted and then upload it to your new place, if that makes sense. There's not really a transferal. It's more of a, like you get it down off of the cloud and then you put it back up through your other service.
Thank you.
So for instance, if you had like pictures or something, maybe you had pictures on your Google Drive, you would download all the pictures you wanted to go onto your iCloud, and then you would upload those from your computer after they were downloaded onto iCloud.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to explain without the visuals, but I tried my best to use my
yes.
hands.
Yeah, gestures work too, especially when we can still see, if we can see your video, which I did spotlight your video, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, we have a couple more questions. One question that takes us back into another app would be about Google Photos.
Okay.
I don't know if we actually have any photos in our demo account or not, but if you want to click on Google Photos, I'm not sure if we have anything in there or not.
Let me get signed in here. Hold on
Okay,
1 second.
may have timed you out. And then we have another question on Google Slides.
Okay. Okay, so I'm in Google Photos right now, and it doesn't look like we have anything.
Okay, so as far as Google Photos go, if you have an Android phone, your photos are will automatically be put up into Google Photos, and then whenever you take a new photo, it's going up into this Google Photos. If you want to delete them, you delete them from one location, you might be deleting it from up here in the cloud as well. So make sure you take a picture. I said this last week in our cloud storage class too. The way to know for sure is to check your settings, take a picture of something you don't care about, and then delete it and see what happens. You can go and see what photos you have up here at photos.google.com. Then you could download those photos to your computer if you wanted. And that is one way that I back up my photos from my phone, is to go into Google Photos, download them to the computer, and then I move them to an external hard drive. But it is important that you play around with a little bit with stuff you don't care about first, so that you figure out exactly how you have it set up. So,
Yes, just
okay.
do a test. It won't hurt.
Yes.
I'll also say that Google is really good about kind of dropping and dragging stuff. So for instance, if you have something on your desktop that you wanted to put into Google, like your Drive, you can just drag and drop it and it will copy it into Google Drive.
Yes.
And that's how you can kind of upload files without needing to get through menus.
Yeah. Or you can click on New and Upload.
Yes, New and then File Upload if you were wanting to get your files on there or your pictures or whatever you want, really.
Mm-hmm. And then our other question was about how to change, and I'm glad you just uploaded a picture because it was to ask, how can you change the pictures in a template for slides? So
Okay.
maybe pick like a photo.
Yeah, let me get into the template. Let me do a new. Google Slides, and we want to do it from a template. Okay, we want to do a photo album. Let's do that. Okay, so this has a couple of pictures in it. Let's do this one because it only has one. So here, if I click on the picture, can you see that? It should say Long Beach, and then it has a photo. So if you click it, I can click and drag and move this around if I wanted to. And then if I right click on it, I should be able to delete it. So if I click delete, okay, now I've deleted that photo, but I want to put in my own photo. If I click on insert, then you'll see an option to insert an image, and then you'll see other options. But if I kind of go over to this other menu, I can either choose to upload an image from my computer, so something I have on my desktop or laptop. I can search the web for an image, or I can get an image from my drive, so something I already have in my Google Drive. So if I click on Drive, then I have a kitten picture that I just uploaded. I'll click on that. And then it says one selected, and I can insert it. And now I've got my kitty photo on my slide. And I can move that around, change it. It's not Long Beach anymore, so I can change that. And then add text if I wanted to, add more images, search the web for an image. Let's see, I want to put a dog image in there. I want this puppy in there, insert. So I recommend kind of just playing around and maybe just make a test document or a test slide and see what works, see what doesn't work. That's kind of the cool thing about Google Drive, is it's not really like, you're not messing with something that's really going to do anything to mess anything up on your end, or it's kind of just fun to play around with. So try it out, insert something, delete something, move something around, see what works for you. I'm a big proponent of trial and error, seeing what I like by trying it out, and if it doesn't work, then I can always change it or create something new.
We have a question about how would you get rid of the background, the color background?
Color background, let me see.
Sometimes that is related to the theme that you have.
Yes.
So since this is a template with a certain theme, you may or may not be able to get rid of it, or you may be able to change the color but not remove it entirely. It kind of depends.
So up here in the toolbar, I see a slide. If I click on slide and do change background, what happens then? I don't want it to be that yellow anymore.
I think that may be the full background too.
I think it may be the design of the slide. So I can change my theme if I click on this theme button here at the top, and I can make it simple, or I can make it this one or this one. Now this will change the whole entire slide format for all of the slides, so keep that in mind too.
And we'll talk about that more with PowerPoint next month too, when we do our PowerPoint demonstrations, and you'll get a chance to see what happens when you use a new theme and it makes all of your text change and go in different places and possibly cover other things up.
I'm kind of messing around here just to see what happens. Yeah. So I just added like a little yellow on this side.
Yeah. So Rebecca is doing exactly what she recommends that everyone do, which is the play around and push buttons, try different things. Yep.
Ooh, I like that. Let's see this one done.
And now she can get really creative.
Yeah, I just recommend kind of going in, creating a slide or a sheet or a document and playing around. Just clicking all the menus, kind of getting a feel for what all the tools do, because there's just so many. And for me, I know I can never ever remember what every single thing does. So for me, it helps to kind of click around and see what does what.
A brief quick return to the dragging and dropping into Drive. And I know you won't be able to fully show us how you do this because we can't show the desktop image right now. But would you go over verbally what you did?
Yeah, so I have kind of minimized my screen so that it doesn't take up, like my window doesn't take up the entire screen, so I can see some of the stuff on my desktop. And what I'm doing is I have an image saved on my desktop of a kitten that I found on the internet. And what I am doing is just clicking and dragging that image from my desktop and hovering it over my Google Drive page. And if you see that where it says drop files instantly to upload them, do you see that little kind of pop up there?
We do not see the pop-up.
Okay, interesting.
It's probably because it's something Zoom won't let us see. But
that's my guess too.
Yeah, but we can send those. We can send the general instructions for it too. Now we do see. Oh, I do see copy, and the little image floating around.
Okay. Yeah. So
there you go. Now it says drop files instantly. Sorry.
Okay. Cool. Good. So if I were to let go, I'm holding my mouse button right now, but if I were to let go, then it would upload that file to my Google Drive. I don't have to drag and drop to upload either. I can go to New in the top left corner and click File Upload. And that way it would let me jump into a folder. Maybe I want to jump into my Downloads folder or maybe my Pictures folder. And then I can go in and upload from there instead of having to drag and drop. So there's a kind of, again, there's more than one way of getting something onto Google Drive or opening something.
And then someone asks if you can remind us how to right click on a Mac, what the equivalent is.
I believe you have to hold down Control and then press your mouse button. Let me just double check. Yep, it's Control and click.
Okay, thank you.
That was just a quick Google search, so I recommend if you're not sure to just Google it.
Yeah, without a mouse, you would do the same thing with the touchpad in front of you, the little square.
If you're on a laptop,
as a mouse, yeah. If you're on a laptop.
What was I writing down? How to upload. I'm just writing these down so when we send out the email later, I don't forget to include them.
Yeah, and we will do that in the follow-up email like we have been for the last couple of times, where we have the little FAQ where we'll include follow-ups that have more description and more links out to other places where they have more description of what they're doing for things like Google Translate and the Photos app and things like that. But yeah, and we do send out a feedback form with that email. So please do fill out that feedback form. And there's a spot in there where you can suggest other workshops if you'd like. So feel free to say that you would prefer a workshop entirely on, the other Google tools that exist, or, one specifically on Docs and specifically on Sheets, all of that kind of stuff.
I'm also happy to demonstrate anything again if anybody needs to see anything twice.
Yeah. So, and yeah, again, we will put this up on YouTube. So as soon as you get that follow-up email, if you'd like, you can jump on to YouTube and watch everything again. And you can practice at the same time if you want. If you have two devices, that's what I recommend doing, is watching on one device and practicing on the other. The mobile versions of the apps look a little different. So I recommend, if you have a phone and a laptop, go ahead and watch on your phone while you're doing the clicking on things through your laptop, because it has the bigger screen where it's a little easier to see. That's just my recommendation, at least based on what I've done with webinars so far myself when I'm attending them.
It does take a little practice to get used to everything. I mean, I was not an expert on Google Drive or Google Documents when I first started either. So it's a learning process, and don't feel bad if it takes you a while. That's just how it goes with computers sometimes.
Yes. And we actually always say too, at the end of the in-person workshops, we used to say, you're always welcome to come back and attend the same workshop again. That's also true with these webinars. We do run most of them each season. So you're more than welcome to come back and attend the next one. We always do a little bit of tweaking before we teach it again, so that we can improve ourselves and our teaching too. And there's, of course, the webinars and videos too. So you could always watch a video, then come to the workshop if you want to.
Yeah, I find that reviewing something twice is really helpful for me, because the first time I'm just working on comprehending everything, and then the second time I can go, okay, I remember hearing about that. Then I can kind of branch out more and get more advanced with stuff. At least for me.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. It's just like learning a new language. There's vocabulary involved, there's muscle memory involved. So practice is good. Practice will help make you feel more comfortable with everything too. And also experimenting, pushing a button, see where it takes you, and then just jump back if you have to. So
I'd say that's the number one thing about how I learn on computers and with new stuff. I just play around with it. I mean, I know that sounds scary because there's so much to do on a computer, and there's just so many things to click, and it could get overwhelming, but I mean, you don't know what it does until you do it.
Right. And of course, this is also why we provide those additional resources too, where there's other tutorials from others that have published tutorials where you can they take maybe a slightly different track than we do when they teach it. So you can also take a look at those tutorials, follow along, and do things step by step the way they do them too. So, all right. Any other questions before we head off?
Well,
all right.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for attending today. As always, you can reach out to us via email, or feel free to call us, and look for that follow-up email probably sometime next week. And hopefully we'll have the video up by that time too. And if you want to attend next week, what do we have next week? Is it
next week? Is that the pictures? No.
Yes. So no, not next week. On the 30th, we are going to try to do what we do. We do an in-person class called Taking Pictures with Your Smartphone or Tablet. And we are going to try to translate that one into the online environment. So hopefully that will be a big success. So feel free to come and join us for that, where you can learn a little bit more about how to take pictures with your phones or tablets.
We're off next week.
We are off next week, yes. Yeah.
So everybody will have plenty of time to practice their Google tools and all that.
Absolutely. For everything you've learned up until now, right?
Yes.
You can practice it all next week. And then come for photos on your phones and tablets.
Yes, I'm excited for that one.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day.